Okay, started. Okay, cool. So welcome to data visualization in our studio. This is the second of our Pre-HackHERS workshops for 2022. So this is the agenda, like this step-by-step of what we're going to do today. So first, we're going to go over like why you would want to build something with data visualization. We're going to have an overview of what we're building. We're going to be searching for data. We're going to be actually using our studio and then publishing the work using our pubs. And then I provide some links at the very end for further inspiration if you do want to do your own project in R. And this is a little peek at what we will have at the end. So these are some reasons why data visualization is super cool. So the first thing is you could tell a story. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think the same goes for data visualizations. I'm going to say data viz from now on. So second thing is that data is everywhere. All aspects of life have some associated data. Three, you could take complex things and make them accessible via summarization. And I feel like that's just really cool because there is so much data in the world. So having it packaged as a more digestible form, I think it could have a lot of benefits. Number four is that you could detect patterns and see and identify trends and anomalies. Five, beautiful things are meant to be shared. So when you have a data viz, you can put it out into the world and people can learn more from it. And the last thing is that you can make predictions because data can provide insights into the future. So today we'll be working with data on women in leadership to visualize how the US compares to other countries in terms of representation. Then we will publish our work for others to view. So here are some sites dedicated to data sets. So these are for you to look on your own time, but for now I will I will show how I found like the woman in leadership thing. So for this workshop, I was thinking, okay, what data set can I use? So I kind of started very basic woman. And I actually found the data I ended up using really quickly. It's called Woman in Power. So I was able to go to data.world and identify the CSV file that I wanted. So I ended up using this, and we will find it, actually, this one. And we will get a better look at this when we open up our studio. But here are the columns in the data files. We have the country name, country code, year, and the proportion of seats held by women in national parliaments. It's a long name. So for today's workshop, we'll need these 3 links. I will send one of them in the chat. This one is the main one and it has links to other things. So if you do have to leave early, or if you find that you want to look at this on your own screen, you could. And also all the code is here if you want to reference that. So now that you have that, we are going to be getting started. So this is the hands-on part of the tutorial. And for this, you will be needing our Studio Cloud. So let me put this in the chat as well. And for this, you're going to need to make an account. If you did already, that's great. Otherwise, I'll give you maybe like 30 seconds to get that done. It shouldn't take too long, especially if you use like an associated Google account. I think you could connect it. But yeah, I'll give you a few seconds to do that. When you do get to this part, I'll start slowly in case you're still making the account. What you're going to do is create a new project and then say new RStudio project. And it takes a second to deploy. And I'll also keep the chat box open in case anyone has questions. All right. So I'm going to keep going as if you all are caught up with me. If you do need me to pause, definitely let me know, especially because there's only a handful of us here. So it's no problem if you need a few, like a minute or two. So once you're at this console, you're going to do File, New File, RScript. And this is where all our code is going to be. So let me pull up my little notes thing. So the first thing you're going to do is import some libraries that we need. So library ggplot2. Then copy and paste. We're going to have 3 total packages: plotly, and then knitr. And also, when you try to save, it'll prompt you to enter a file name. I'm just going to call this woman in leadership. So you're most likely going to get this error or this warning, and this will just prompt you to install the packages that you don't already have. So go ahead and install those. As it is installing, I'll explain what each one does. So ggplot2 is, it gives you a lot of control over how your plots look, how your graphs look. Plotly gives you the ability to make it interactive. And then knitr gives you the ability to publish to RPubs. And as this is loading, I will also put extra links in the chat. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting the actual CSV files and I'm getting the raw GitHub file. So I'm going to open both of these. And I am going to click raw over here. And this gives me the raw content from GitHub. And what this will allow me to do, is to load the CSV into my R script. So back in RStudio Cloud, well, actually, let me put these in the chat first. So I have the political representation one, which is the one I pulled up before. And then I also have this one, which just has information on countries and the regions that the countries are in. And we'll see how that comes into play later. So with these 2 raw GitHub links, what you're going to do is the first thing you want to do is actually to load the data. So I'm going to call our main data, which is the representation one, just data. And I'm going to do read.csv, and then that first link, that first raw GitHub link in quotation marks. So this will load the data in the file. And then I'm going to copy and paste and then call the second one region data. And I'm going to copy and paste the other one. Oh, I didn't, I think I copied the wrong one in the beginning. So let me redo that. .csv. I don't know why I'm unable to copy from the chat here, but I will just go to the thing again. Bloop. There we go. So now we have these 2 files. And if we click on line 5 and press run, we could run line 5. So when you click run, you will run line by line. And if you want to run chunks at once, you could highlight and then press run. So it'll run both of them. And now we see in our environment, we have these 2 data frames that are loaded. And this is just what we want. So you could kind of take a peek to see what it looks like and how long they are. So you'll see actually the sizes on the side here. And yeah, so now we have our data. I want to learn more about my data at this point. So I'm going to do call names data, and I'm going to do range data year. This is just to kind of take a closer peek at what is in my main data frame. So call names, what are the headers that I'm looking at? So we have country name, country code, year, and then this really, really long name that has 4 periods at the end, which is a little strange, but this is kind of important. So I could like copy and paste this later and know that I'm referencing the correct header later on. And the second thing is range of the years. This will come into play with the actual visualization that we do, because we want to see the changes over the years. We have 1997 and then 2019. Those are the bookends of the years we're looking at. So what we're going to do now is actually start with the visualization. I'm going to start with a simpler one. So what I want to do is just get the global proportions by year and graph them. So every year, what is the global average of women in leadership? What is the average proportion? of all countries together. And to do that, I first need, well, what I'm going to end up doing is looping through all the countries and adding a part of data that stores the averages. So I'm going to write it out and then I will explain later. So first I'm going to get the length of the range. So that just achieved by diff range data year. So what this does, it just gives me the number of things to loop through because I want to do for every year. And I'm actually going to create a new data frame called yearly global averages. I'm going to do that by doing data.frame. And then I want this to be empty in the beginning, and then I'm going to use the loop to populate it. So the way I do this is by putting year equal to rep NA len. So what this does is it gives it a column called year, and all the things in year, they're all of value NA, which is nothing, similar to like null or none. And it's going to be of length here, of length len. So that's one column of length len with nothing in it. The second thing, the second column is going to be average proportion. Average proportion. And it's going to use the same syntax. So average proportion is equal to rep NA len. So both of these are empty columns to begin with. And let me make sure I have the right things. Yeah, there we go. And if we want to just take a peek at what is here, we could run this entire chunk and we see we have a data frame with 22 rows and the columns are all empty, which is just what we want. Now we want to populate this data frame by looping through the years. So the for loop is structured as such: for I in 1 to len. So 1 to len denotes like you start at 1 and go till len. Year is equal to year. Actually, my bad. I want to do year is equal to the min of data year. And what this does is it stores 1997. I want the minimum value in all the years. And that way I know what to start at. So my bad, I jumped too quickly. So what I want to do first is update the year variable. So yearly global averages year of the first item, or like the ith row of the data frame. That's how you get that. So yearly global averages year I is equal to year, which currently is at 1997, which is where we start. And then I want to increment the year. So year is equal to year plus 1. And then I want to update the average proportion. And the way I do that is by first subsetting the data. So when I say take a subset, I mean that you're looking through the data that you have and finding rows that meet a certain requirement. So I want to call this temp subset, and I only want to find rows that apply for the current year that we're at. So say when we start, I only want to find the rows that have the year 1997. So I'm going to do temp subset is, so we, instead of using the equal sign, a lot of times assignments are used, they use these little arrows. So temp subset is equal to subset data, which is the main thing we're looking at. So we're subsetting from data. And then the way we're going to do it is we're going to subset the data where year is equal to yearly global averages year I. So what this does is it checks for every single row, it checks is the year that we're looking at, is the year variable equal to the current year that we're at. So we could either do, we could use year, the little thing as well, because we set it equal to, this assignment sets yearly global averages year I equal to year, so you could use either or, but yeah. And then what we do is, I'm gonna copy and paste this part. Oop, my bad. So I'm going to copy and paste that underneath. So yearly global averages of average proportion I is now equal to the mean temp subset. And I'm actually going to put this in the chat because it's so long. I'll put this entire line in the chat. So this is the entire line. It's long because the name of the variable is long. So proportion of seats held by women in national parliaments. So I want to look at the temp subset. So after I found all the years that are relevant to me, I'm going to look at the column that shows the proportion of seats held by women. And I'm going to find the mean of all the values in that column. And when this little line here, na.rm equals t, that says that if it's empty, it's okay. Just make that, just don't include it if the value is empty in the data frame. So now after I go through all of this, I'm going to run this code now. I could look at yearly global averages and I should see that things are populated. No, I highlighted something. Okay, yeah. So we see now that this is populated. Also, I noticed that it's up to 2018 rather than 19. So I need to add 1 to the length over here because the length that we calculated was exclusive when we want it to be inclusive. So I'm going to rerun this chunk of code after adding 1 to the length. And now we see it's from 1997 to 2019. We have the years and we have the average proportions of women in leadership positions. So that's fun. The thing we want to do next is actually plot. So I'm going to call this plot P and I'm going to assign something to it. So here is where we use ggplot. So ggplot. That's the command. And inside we put all the parameters of this, this graph. So I'm going to say data is equal to yearly global averages, because at first we're just going to graph this. I'm going to say mapping equals AES. And then within AES, I'm going to put my X and Y variables. So X is equal to year and Y is equal to average proportion. And after that, I'm going to add a plus sign, which shows that I am adding another feature to this plot. So ggplot first defines the variables, and then geom underscore point allows me to like give values to the actual points that appear. So let me just show you what it looks like without that. So when you run this, and I'm going to put P afterwards so we can actually display it. So run this, run P, and you don't see any data here. And that's not what we want. So what I'm going to do is add back geom point. And when I do that, there we have a graph. This is not the only graph we're going to be doing. This is just a preliminary thing, a simpler one, and then we'll do a more complicated one next. But yeah, I'll keep it like that for now. There's not much to it. It has average proportion, it has year, and for the next one, we're going to be going into styling and like how we could make this look better. So what we want to do now is create what I had earlier. So we have this graph here. We want to look at how countries compare to one another. And also you see here that I include the regions of the countries. So China is in Eastern Asia, France is in Western Europe, etc. So the original data set that we had, data, it does not have this extra information about the regions, which is why we loaded the region data. So I want region data, everything here, to be a part of the main data frame. And for that matter, I want yearly global averages to be a part of my main data frame. So to do that, I'm going to do data, then the little arrow, merge, data, region data, which says, okay, so I'm merging these two data sets. And what do I want to merge them by? I want to merge them by country names. But notice that for the main data frame, the country name is denoted by country.name. And for region data, it's just called name. So to kind of handle that discrepancy, I'm going to do by.x is equal to country.name. And then by.y is equal to name. And so by X corresponds to the first data frame, by Y corresponds to the second one. And I'm also going to do an extra little step here saying all X is equal to true and all.Y is equal to false. So what this says is that I don't want to lose any of the data in X because sometimes things don't match up perfectly. So all X, I want to keep all X. So if you can't find a mapping, it doesn't matter, just keep it empty. But all Y, it doesn't matter if I keep it or not. So everything in Y is going to be merged into X. And if Y doesn't map onto anything, it's fine, we could lose it. So I'm going to copy and paste this and do the same thing with the yearly global averages. So with data and yearly global averages, they actually have the same column name. So I don't need to do the by.x and by.y things. I just do by equals year. So now by running both of these, what should happen is that my data should expand. So this is now my original data, and I see that it has the extra region attributes as well as the average proportion. The next thing I want to do is I want to subset again, because as we see over here, we have a bunch of countries. There are like over 100 countries represented in our data. We don't want all of them. So I want to select only a few countries. So I'm going to subset. Arbitrarily, you could pick whatever countries you want. I'm going to do countries with the highest GDPs. Feel free to do any countries that you are interested in. But the countries with the highest GDPs, I'm going to subset by looking at the data frame that we have. And I need to now put a conditional in this second parameter. So I'm subsetting from data and like what is the conditional that I'm using? So I want to do country name is equal to United States. Or the or is denoted by the one line, or country name equals whatever. I'm going to copy and paste this in the chat. If you are following along, you could use what I have. So I just have the top 7 countries with the highest GDPs. And I'm going to go ahead and actually copy and paste that so I don't have to go out typing all of these. And I mentioned before that there might be some discrepancies with merging the data. And there actually was in this case. So we see, I think the problem is that one data set refers to the United States as the United States, and the other refers to it as the United States of America. So I want to change that basically. So to do that, I'm going to do a little fix here. I'm going to go into this data frame and just explicitly change it. I'm not going to do any fancy logic. I'm just literally accessing the value and changing it. So country with the highest GDP, and I want to get the variable name. So I didn't mention this before because I figure you were looking at my screen, but to actually access a variable name from a data set, you use the $sign. So country with the highest GDPs is a data set or data frame, more precisely, and I want to get the sub.region variable. And I'm going to set it equal to something. So what this does, it gets the entire sub-region column. I really only want to change like one or two items here. So I'm going to use an if statement to do that. I'm going to do if else, which is the notation. So if countries with the highest GDPs, variable name, so country name, if that is equal to the United States, this is actually very similar to a ternary operator or a SQL statement. So if it's equal to the United States, then the first thing I'm going to do, so if else conditional, and the second value will be what will happen if that conditional is true. So I'm going to call it Americas, which is the region. Otherwise, if we're looking at a country that is not the United States, I don't want to change it. So I'm going to do countries with highest GDPs, country name. Actually, I'm sorry, subregion. So let me explain again what this means. If I want to find, so I'm going with this if else statement, I'm finding all the country names, all the items that have the country name United States. Then if I have found it, then I'm going to set the subregion to Americas. Otherwise, I'm not going to change it at all. And I'm going to keep it as countries with the highest GDP subregion. Hopefully that made sense. And this is also the problem with like the United Kingdom. It wasn't merged correctly. So I'm going to do the same thing. United Kingdom is in northern Europe. And now all of the countries have the right regions. All right. So with that, our data is ready and we can go ahead and start plotting it. So I am going to use the same syntax I used before. So I'm going to copy and paste just so I don't need to type out as much stuff. So P, we're going to set it to a ggplot where the data is data. And in terms of the mapping, we want to map the year against the proportion of seats held by women. So in that year. And that name is long. And I think we used it before. So if you need to, we could copy that variable name again. So we want the proportion of seats held by women in national parliaments. Oh, I keep on going back, my bad. So, and we want to replace that Y variable here. So X is the year and the Y is the proportion of seats held by women. So let's see what this looks like. Oh, I haven't, yeah, let me go through all of these. We already merged data and let me just subset. Let me, boop. Warning message, remove 100. Oh, okay. Not what I forgot to do is put that keyword na, the na.rm equals t. So right now I'm seeing the message removed 152 rows containing missing values. So I don't want that to happen. And this little phrase here prevents that from happening. So if there's a missing value, it doesn't matter. It will just ignore it. So this is now what we have. And it doesn't really look that exciting. It just looks like a bunch of dots on the grid. So what to do? Now we want to style it. So let me, give me one moment. Oh, you know what I did incorrectly? That's why. So notice how I put data equal to data. That is our original data frame. What I should have done was get the data frame that we've been working with, countries with the highest GDPs, and put that as the data frame. So that was my bad. Let me redo that now. So that's a little better. That is something that we are expecting now. But even so, this, you can't get anything of value from this. I don't know what I'm looking at. These values mean nothing to me. So we are going to add some more items to this grid. So something cool about ggplot is that you don't just need to represent two values. So right now we have the X and the Y, but we also have the powers of like colors and shapes to represent other data. So after we have X and Y, within the parentheses, I'm going to add two more variables to include. So shape will indicate the country. So shape is equal to country.name, comma, then color is going to be equal to sub.region. So let's see if this works. All right, so here we're getting somewhere now. We see that, like, if we want to look for China's information, we look at the circles here, and we see that it's green, and green corresponds to to Eastern Asia, and we see there are two countries that are from Eastern Asia. So this just gives us a little more insight into what exactly we're looking at. And the next things I'm going to do are just style it a little more. So with geom_point, this attribute, it lets you style the actual point itself, the points that are on the graph. So I'm going to say size is equal to 3, alpha is equal to 8, or 0.8, my bad. Just kind of arbitrarily, I wanted to just make it a little fancier, a little, I want to make these points a little bigger, and if things overlap, I don't want them to block out each other completely. And with the actual shapes, I also have control over what they are. So I'm going to add this extra attribute called scale_shape_manual. And what this does is it allows you to explicitly pick the visuals that you want. So the actual points, each point type, each point shape corresponds to a number. So with this, you can kind of select which points you want exactly. What I'm going to do is just do values equal to sequence 0, 9. So what this says is that I want all the shapes from shape 0 to shape 9 to be represented in this graph. So let's see, with these changes, what are we looking at? So now we have something like this, which is kind of cooler. We see that a lot of these shapes are now empty, and they are a bit bigger, so it's easier on the eyes. All right, cool. So if you remember from the last visualization we did, we have data on the averages, which I think would be really helpful because right now we're comparing countries to each other, but we don't have a baseline. So I'm going to add a geom_line to this visualization. And to do that, it's a similar structure as this first line here. So I'm going to do data is equal to countries with highest GDPs. I'm going to do AES. And then in parentheses, X is equal to year. Y is equal to average _ proportion. And then I'm also going to do some extra styling by making the color gray, just so it doesn't pop out too much, because we still want the main focus to be the other things. So now we have this baseline where we see the averages throughout the years, and we can compare things like Germany, which Germany, you're doing well comparatively, but it's still under 40%. So we can compare that to the baseline. But wait, there's more. There's no title to this this graph, and the X and Y axes, they're not the most telling. I mean, the proportion of seats held by women in proms, I don't like the way it's formatted. So I'm going to change it. Year we could keep, but I'm going to first add a title using GG title. And I'm going to say proportion of women in political leadership. Then I'm going to do a plus sign to add another attribute. I'm going to do Y lab, which sets the Y axis label. And I'm going to call it just average proportion. Actually, I'm going to just say proportion because average proportion denotes what we had for the last visualization. So I'm just going to say proportion. Oh, my bad. I didn't mean to undo. Redo. All right. Okay, so we're getting somewhere now. I'm not going to go over the margin stuff. It's in the code if you want to look at it on your own time. In the interest of time, I'm just going to move forward. And I'm going to now use Plotly, which is the tool we want to make this an interactive thing. So ggplot.plotly p is going to be the command we use. So we feed this p value, this plot that we've created with ggplot, and we put into ggplotly, which is a part of the Plotly package. And it will allow us to visualize things and in an interactive way. So I will run this. Could not find function ggplotly. Are you sure about that?
Wait, was it plot like Lee or PLOTY on the top import?
Plot. Good catch. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you, Kuhu. Okay, so now I want to run ggplotly. And let me just run all of this again, actually. Aha, now we have something. So this is the visualization we're left with, and it's very similar to what we just saw, except now we can hover over each data point and see more information. So we see that this is the year 1999, and that's the exact proportion we're looking at for Germany in this year. And we also see that the subregion is Western Europe. But it does not stop there because we can click these little, what they're called traces. We can click these traces here to kind of narrow down what we're looking at exactly. So if we just want to see America, we could see, and we see that it compares, it's very similar to the average, which is abysmally low for an average, in my opinion. So when we could compare this to something like Germany, which again, is doing super well comparatively. And we also see that regions of countries of the same region have the same color. So we could see that China is doing better than Japan in terms of representation in government. And Plotly also allows you to do something like this, where you zoom in on a particular section of data, so you could kind of see more granularly how the data points compare to one another. If you want to reset, you go back and reset axis. So I will be honest. Actually, no, this is not everything I want to go over, because these things here, they're kind of annoying. So for every country, there is a line that's created when we do this this attribute in the plot itself. So I really don't want these to be in my Plotly in the end. I think they don't serve any purpose. I want that line to be there at all times. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add one more thing. So I'm going to do P arrow again and I'm going to do style P show legend equals false traces equal to 8:14. So what this does is that it says, okay, I'm going to add a style to the plot. I don't want the legend to show, but only for traces 8 through 14. And if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 is where it starts and then it ends at 14. So I don't want any of these traces to show in the final product. So when I run it again, I end up with a nice clean thing where I could just remove these bullet points and manipulate these. All right, so now we are done with the coding part. And now I want to share this with the world. You know, I am done with everything. And as I mentioned before, data and beautiful things are meant to be shared. So what I can do here, literally there's a button right here that says publish. So let's see what this does. So it says it requires some packages. You could just say yes. And you will be presented with this. So I want to use our pubs, and I'm going to click our pubs. I'm going to click publish. And when this opens up, it might prompt you to log in. I'll give everyone like a second to make an account. And I'm not sure if people are following along in time or if they're going to follow along after this and just looking at the code, but I will go a little bit slowly. So once you're here, it will likely prompt you to make an account if you don't already have one, and you could just fill in the document details. So I want to call this woman in leadership. I'm going to remove the underscores because I don't need that for this. So woman in leadership, data visualization of woman in political leadership over the years. Yeah. And I could have a slug. So this is where my link is going to exist. I'm going to just call it woman in leadership. I'm going to call it 0 just because this is not the final version. This is going to be just a version of this that we don't have much control over. So the next thing we're going to do is quickly go over a version of this that you have more control over. That's what I'm trying to say. So right now we have this here, and this actually was not what I was expecting. Let me see something. All right. So the controls here are slightly different than what is in the RStudio app that I have. So either way, you have this published, but it's not much. I want, maybe in a different world, I want to give this more context, and I want to show the process that I went through to actually present this information. In the RStudio desktop app, you could simply do Command-Shift-K, and that will generate a full report of everything you did in your code. But if you click this button here, it will only show what's in the viewer. But let's say I want to create something that I have more control over and that does represent my code, but not everything. I only want it to represent the code that I feel is important. So this is here, cool. And anyone could now access this. Let me just put it in the chat. You could go and explore it yourself. But the next thing I'm going to do to kind of wrap us up is I am going to do file, new file, and instead of an R script, I'm going to do an R markdown file. What an R mark file does is an R markdown file. What it does is it is a way just to format your code and present it in a particular format. So we could do HTML, PDF, or Word. I'm going to do HTML. I'm going to call it woman in leadership. I'm going to say the author is Sam Lee. So now I have all of this information here. And I have this, I'll have this template. That was the word I was looking for. So I'm just keeping in mind the time that we have together. So I'm going to do something very similar. I'm going to kind of get rid of this stuff as we go along, but I want, so these chunks here, when you have the 3 little single quotations and then these brackets, this is where you want to include your code. So this is my R code. I'm going to call it the setup code. This could be any name you want. And then a comma, and then any parameters you want to include. So for this, I'm going to say include false. So these pieces of code are important when you include like the library, say, oops, sorry. I'm going to copy and paste the libraries into this R Markdown file, but I don't want to include them in the final report. So I'm going to say include equals false. And let's say I also want to include some extra details. So maybe like a background section. I could say something like, many boast America to be the land of the free, but is its population truly represented in government? Let's find out. Let's compare the numbers. That's an example background. And I'm going to well, actually I have this already, so I'm going to just replace this. Let's say next I want to load the data and I also don't want to include it. So include is equal to false. I'm just copying and pasting my code from over here. And I'm going to do the raw GitHub user content actually. I have a second screen open, which has similar code, but it's slightly different. So I'm going to use this one that we used. And with the data sets, something else that R has is an ability to kind of summarize that data. So we can look at it here. So after we load this data, we do some summary of data. And if we run that one line, we get what you expect, which is a summary. And you see the minimum, maximum, and then like means and various statistics of all the different variables. So here, okay, I want to say here are some data summaries. And I want to use the same notation. I'm going to delete the contents here, and I'm going to call this data sums. And I do want to include this actually, but instead of saying include equals false, I'm gonna, I do have the option to not include any parameters, but I want to say echo is equal to false because I don't really need to show I want this to be printed out at the end. I want this like summary to be printed out, but I don't need the code that got me there to be printed out itself. So I'm going to say summary data and then summary of region data. But I don't want these actual lines to be printed. And we'll see in the end what this published document looks like, but I'm just going to quickly go through the rest of it. And then that'll be that. We can go back to the slides. So the next thing I want to do is just have the first plot that we did. So average global proportions by year. And for this, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to include any parameters. I'm going to call this averages. And I'm going to straight copy and paste the stuff here. So starting at like len, I'm going to go all the way down to this p-value where I actually display the plot. Where averages? Here we go. Oh, I did the wrong one. So let me, My bad. Data sums, and I want to create a new one. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now all of this code will be displayed in the report, and it will also print out the plot that I made. And then I could do the same thing for the app for the next thing, or the same thing for the next plot that we did. So I'm going to copy and paste, delete stuff from the template, and I could say graphing and comparing select countries. And this one will just say comp for compare. And I'm going to copy and paste everything from the merging of the data to ggplotly. And I see that it is 8, so I'm going to do this really quickly. Now I can do the same process where I publish to our pubs. Only render document published to our pubs. Click knit or preview. Oh, there we go, knit. So what knit does, this is why we imported knitter. It knits everything together. So now this is what my final thing is going to look like. And we have the final visualization here with the code. And yeah, so this is all rendered now, and I could go ahead and publish it using our pubs. And this one is the one I'm going to call, the one I'm actually going to put in the Women in Leadership slug. Women in Leadership. And I'm going to use the same background as I did here. Continue, and now it's here. Lovely, cool. So I'm going to really quickly wrap this up. So that was a tutorial. These are videos that you could kind of see if you'd like to kind of see what the product is. And for further inspiration, you can go to these different links to kind of look at other visualizations and see what's possible with R. So I really like these a lot when I'm feeling like I want to code something, but I don't know what to code, because there is just a whole variety of things you could do in R and using this kind of software. So that is it. Thank you for being here, and make sure to register for Hackers at that link. Thank you and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Sam.